Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. And welcome to a video that I didn't realize that I needed to make. It's been so long since I've done an update on this topic and I'm very excited to do it because since about the 10 months, almost a year that I've had this book recommendation form available, I have had some amazing recommendations from viewers. So I'm going to break this video up into two quick parts. Number one, I'm going to do an explanation of the book rec form because some people don't know what it is, and I want to kind of reiterate. I'll also be posting about this on my community page just to kind of remind people and revitalize this because this really is the way that I take my recommendations. Obviously, it's not the only way I get recommendations from viewers, but it is the best way to get your recommendation in front of me, okay? It just is. And when I get recommendations through Instagram DMs or in my comments, there's a good chance that they're going to get missed because a lot of times when I see comments, I'm not sitting down at my computer where I can just go ahead and add them to my Goodreads. And when I get DMs about recommendations, it's just not I just don't super either love recommendations getting thrown at me that way. And I am not critiquing anyone who's done it before. I mean, I've even done it before. I've just learned over the last few years of doing Booktube that this is the best way to organize it. It's the way that things don't get lost. And I know that it constitutes another step for people, but also it's just as many steps as if you were to DM me. It's just as simple to fill out this form because you're literally putting the same information in the form that you would in a message to me, and it's more likely that I'm going to see it. So anyway, like I said, there'll be two parts. I'm going to explain how this came about, how it's happened, and then the second part, because if you're someone who's been a long-time viewer or been around and knows what this form is, you already know all that stuff. You probably just want to know if I've read the book you recommended and the rating that I gave it, if you don't know already. So this first part here. So going back, I actually had to go back to see when I started this, and it looks like this was started back in July, I believe I started it, of 2021. I actually thought it was longer before then, so it is coming up on exactly a year. And I was just feeling, like I said, I was feeling very overwhelmed with recommendations in a great way, of course, but I used to just have a running list that I was making, and so when people would send me a rec, I would add it to a Google Doc where I would just toss the book in there and try to remember it. And then I was like, I had just started using a Google form to track my own yearly reads. This is something that I do myself. Every book that I read, I fill out a form, and you're able to turn it into a Google Sheets where I can then organize things and just make it more visual for myself. And I was like, hey, there's a way that I could have the viewers do this for me just by filling out this form, and then I'm able to have every recommendation listed out, the name, the author, who recommended it if you want to, and then I make a second sheet on this spreadsheet where I put the ones that I've read, and that's what we're going to be going over in just a minute here. And also the option that I gave, and this kind of came from a chat with my Fated Friends, which is a level of my channel memberships, and we were having our live chat, and some of them were nervous about recommending certain books to me. And this is not everyone by far, obviously, but some people were nervous that if I didn't like their book, then they would feel bad. And I totally get that. I totally get that because when some of my favorite creators read a book I love and they don't like it, I feel like I've failed somehow, which is totally not true because we all have different tastes, but I understand the impulse. So that led to this book rec form being made, which I'm showing a picture of it right here, where I have, there's just 3 simple questions. 2 of them are mandatory, 1 of them is not. So you put the name of the book and the author, and then you put what tropes are in this book. You do not have to give me a full explanation. Some people try to give me literally the entire blurb of the book. Please don't do that. Just tell me the tropes or the quick reason that you liked it, literally 5 to 10 words. Or some people, like I said, will list all the tropes. They'll say mafia, age gap, enemies to lovers. And I'm like, cool. Because by putting the tropes in that section, then when I'm looking for, let's say I'm craving something, I go to my book rec form all the time for recs this way. When things just aren't working for me and I'm like, you know what, I just want to read a book that I've like never heard of before, but it is like recommended to me from people. I go into that Google Sheets, which has 500 recommendations in it, and I can Control F and search for age gap or search for arranged marriage, and it will, you know, highlight all the ones that someone said that. So very important step to put the tropes in, and also makes it more likely for me to like find something. Like when I did fantasy romance, which we're going to get to some books I read during that, right? I literally typed in fantasy and everything that was a fantasy romance highlighted, and I was able to choose my TBR completely based off of viewer recommendations. It was a wonderful month in February to read those. So this form came about by that. Now the third question, which can be, like I said, left blank, is if you would like to remain anonymous, you can leave it blank. If you would like a shout out or you'd like me to know that you recommended it, because let's say like you mentioned it in a video or you specifically have talked to me about it and I've said, hey, go fill out the book rec form, that will like let me know who said it. Because like I have like my very favorite books, I like to know who recommended them. And if I really love it, I'll like say who it was recommended by. If I like don't like your book, don't worry, I won't drag you. None of that will happen, but you can keep it anonymous if you don't want that. Like if you really just want to like throw it out into there, like you can keep it anonymous. And like, honestly, I've had such a great time with these, like I said. So anyway, that's what the book rec form is. So just to reiterate, if you've ever left me a recommendation in like the comments of a video, chances are I didn't take it, especially in the last 6 months, because I get my viewer recommendations from this book rec form. So if there's one that you really want to get in front of me, go do this. This time I will have it in the comments like bold. Otherwise, you can always find this book rec form in every video that I put out. It is in my Instagram bio under my link tree, and it is in every comment section where it either says book rec form here, and you click on that, or it'll be in my link tree. It's always in my link tree, book rec form. You can fill it out. Also, you can fill this out as many times as you'd like. I have it where there is unlimited recommendations. So each book, make it its own. I've had people do that too, where they like put in like 5 books in one. I'm like, no. You aren't limited to one. You can unlimitless number of recommendations. In fact, I can tell when someone will do that because they'll be like entered like 10 seconds apart. And like Daniela, one of my viewers and friends, she will like put 10 in at once one day, and it'll, you know, I'll be like, oh, Daniela gave me a whole bunch. That's awesome. So anyway, that is what the form is. That is how I use it. I read books from this form every single month. Every single month I'm reading at least 1 or 2. I actually try to read at least 5 every month. In fact, that's been a goal this whole year, and it's been the goal since I started it. But sometimes I read way more because sometimes people recommend books that like it's already on my TBR to read. There are a couple other rules for which books are going to be your best bet for me to read them, and that is in the form. You can see that. Like I say, like make sure it has a romance, make sure it has some level of steam to it. Like it doesn't have to be the spiciest thing, but if you're recommending me like really soft, like no steam romances, it's probably not going to happen. And then I really have no interest in like really reverse harems or books that have cheating in them. Also, if there's a series you're wanting me to get into, please just recommend the first book. In the beginning, there was some people who would recommend like, let's say it was Cressley Cole. I'm just making this up. People would say A Hunger Like No Other, and then Dark Desires at Night, and they'd like put each of them in as a separate one. And I'm like, no. Just put the first book in a series in there. If it's a series where like you don't want me to read the first 3 and that's why you recommended the 4th one, feel free to do that. But otherwise, even if you want me to read the whole series, like just recommend the first book. But anyway, that's enough rules. I'm really not trying to make this complicated. Again, I'm just telling you, you can recommend anything you want. If it's a book I've already read or it's one that's on my hard no list, I'm not going to shame you for it. I'm just going to delete it from my form. Like I just cleaned it up just yesterday when I was preparing for this video, and yeah, there was a bunch of books in there that are on my like hard no list because they're from authors that I won't read, or they're tropes that I don't want, or they have triggers that I don't want to read. And then I just delete them, and it doesn't hurt anybody. So, okay, that's enough chatting. It's already been 10 minutes. That's what the form is. That's how it works. And if you're new here and you're wondering, you know, oh yeah, I've been recommending books in her comments, this might be a good chance for me to do that. Please do it. I love it. I love it so much. I check that form at least twice a week, for sure on the weekends when I am like updating the books that I've read. I go into the form and I see what new books have been put in, and then I add them to a Goodreads list that is recommended by viewers. And then when I make my TBRs, I pick books for my TBR, or like I said, if I just am feeling slumpy and I'm like, you know what, I just want a random age gap, I will just go pick one from this form, because I do trust your guys' recommendations, and you'll see why. So here we go. Like I said, I have been reading these since last year. According to my tracking, I've read about 75 books that have been directly recommended from this form. Like I said, some of them I was already planning to read, or books I already had read, but I've read 75 directly from this list out of probably like 700 recs that I've got. But the book rec form, without doubles or without books I've already read, I have it down to 476 is what I'm at right now after cleaning it up, which is kind of amazing. Like, I love it. So the first 20 books that I read, I have already talked about them in videos. I'm going to have those linked. They probably already will have popped up at some point. I have a video that had the first like 6 books, and then I had one that had like 12 more on it. So I'm going to be going through 55 books in this video, which you probably already know from the cover art, whatever, I can't talk, the thumbnail. But I have all of them written down, and I have them like tier ranked. And no, we're not going to do like the tier ranking thing, because I don't have the skills to video record something like that. Don't know. But I have all of them written down, and I have them broken down by rating. So we're going to start with the DNFs, the 1 and 2 stars, and then we'll go to the 3 and 3.5 stars, 4 and 4.5 stars, the 5 stars, and the 6 stars. So we're just going to go through, and most of these I won't talk too much in depth about, because they're all books that I've already had in my weekly wrap-ups. So I will also tag that playlist up here, because as I've said, you know, on many different videos, I review every video that I read in my weekly wrap-ups. So going back to August of last year, which I know is a little ways back, but I list all of the books in the description of those videos. So if there's one of these that you want to know more details about it, that's going to be the best place to find it. Sorry that that's not a perfect answer for that, but I just don't have the time to go in detail with books that I've already gone in detail with. But this is me, as we know, so I'm sure I will rant a little bit here, go in depth a little bit there. But some of these books are literally some of my favorite books I've read in the last couple of years, or, you know, a year, but in 2021 and 2022, they're some of my favorite books. So I'm very excited about this. So we're going to start with the books I've DNF'd, which I only have 3 of those. So that's great. The 3 that I DNF'd were, the first one was Pretty Little Mess by Carmel Rhodes. This is one that I definitely go on a rant about. It had to do something with the hero calling the heroine Piss Girl as a fun little joke of a nickname. That didn't work for me. Lick by Kylie Scott. I was not hating this one. I just was not vibing with it. Rockstar romances are very tough for me, and the hero was driving me bonkers. So wrong place, wrong time. This one didn't work. And Tangled by Emma Chase. So this was one I was excited to try, and this was one that was actually just made into a Passion Flix movie, which you can definitely, you know, watch that on Passion Flix if you're interested. That is a romance-only like TV service. It's kind of interesting. But as Emma Chase's want to do, this was a book that was all from the hero's POV, but there was like cheating involved and some other things, and I ended up DNFing it at like 70% because I was like, there's no way that this book is wrapping up that I'm gonna like be okay with it. But there's another Emma Chase on this list that is one of my favorites. So those were the 3 I DNF'd. For 1 to 2 stars, there literally is only 1 on this whole list. That is for 2 reasons, and I talk about, like, I have very few 1 to 2 star books in general because I do DNF. I'm not afraid to DNF a book, and if I feel like a book is going towards a 1 or a 2 star, I usually peace out of said book because I don't like rating books 1 or 2 stars. I'd rather just say it's a DNF and it didn't work for me. But this 1 or 2 star was actually very recently. So if you want to see a rant for this one, I can tell you that it is from week 24 and you can go watch my rant about it. But that is Row by Dylan Page. This was a primitive romance with a heroine who ends up with a group of primitive beings, and there is a lot of breeding kink and a lot of non-consensual things happening, and I only finished this one because I wanted to rant about it, because I don't really rant about books that I DNF, so there was that. Alright, moving right along. It all gets easier from here, folks, I promise, because now we have the 3 to 3.5 star books, and I have 6 of these, so that's great. Here we go. There was Red by S.J. Sanders, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. And again, I probably won't remember a lot about these ones because they're spread out over a year. But this one was, I believe, a reverse harem that was there was wolf aliens or shifters. And it was like a reverse harem with a pack. Then I actually have this one. Some of these I have the physical copies here and I'll show them. Slightly Married by Mary Balog. This was a 3.5 star for me. This is the first in the Bedouin saga. I have also read the second one in the series. Yeah, I've also read Slightly Wicked. So this was a great recommendation. I love Mary Balog, so I own quite a few of her books. So it was no hardship for me to read this one. It was just, as she does, a little bit slow moving for me, but that's not a bad thing. Simply Sexual by Kate Pierce. I gave this one 3.5 stars. This one was an erotic historical romance, and I am very intrigued to read more Kate Pierce. So good job with whoever recommended this one. Guild by Raven Kennedy. I gave this one 3 stars. There's no surprise why this was recommended to me. Pretty much every book that has graced TikTok and has exploded somewhere, people have recommended to me. I am still interested in continuing this series. I do have the audiobook for the next book, but I found that a lot of the books that TikTok has gone gaga over, I have not gone so gaga over. Although I do know that Glow just came out. A lot of people love that, but this is a series that isn't finished yet. There was a lot of books on TikTok that the series is ongoing. So this is a series that, again, I'm willing to revisit it, but I will probably wait till this series is over. Hitman by C. Hallman and Isabella Starling. I gave this one 3 stars. This one had somnophilia and non-consensual acts, and there was drugging happening in this book. But the person who recommended this to me, I know who she is, and I know why she thought to have me read it. So no hate for that. The Unwanted Wife by Natasha Anders. This was a 3 star for me. And this one, a lot of people recommend it for the grovel. They say the grovel is very epic. I did not find this couple worth the grovel for me. This book was so high angst and just unbelievably painful to read this book, and by the time they have their HEA, I literally just wanted to wash my hands of them. So I like a grovel, but I also don't like it to be to the point where a hero has to grovel at the level that the hero needs to grovel in this book. At that point, I'm like, move along. And that's it. Those are all the ones that are 3 or 3.5. Look at us ripping through here. But now we'll have quite the trucking, because the vast majority of my recommendations have been between 4 and 4.5 stars, which is wonderful. We are entering the territory where I consider that recommendation a success, and I can't even tell you how many it is. It's over 20. I think there's 30 that are 4 or 4.5 star, and I actually own quite a few of these. So we're going to start going through these ones. Again, I probably won't remember a ton of details about these, so you'll have to look for more in-depth reviews if you want it, but I'm going to tell you what I rated it, in case it was you who recommended it. We have Up for the Challenge by Riley Hart and Devin McCormack, I think is how you say that. This one was 4 stars. This was a gay romance, and I think it was a gay for you romance, which I know some people have problems with, but I read lots of problematic things, and I didn't have a problem with it. And this was, I think, like, the straight guy is super cocky, or was the gay guy super cocky? I can't remember which, but it was a, like, I'm gonna get ya type thing. Drag Me Up by R.M. Virtues. I gave this 4 stars. This, I believe, was a Hades and Persephone retelling. I think this one was with a trans heroine in this one. Yes, and it's very kinky delightfulness by R.M. Virtues. Kiss of the Blood King by Alessa Thorne. I gave this one 4.5 stars. This was a like fantasy romance novella, the first in like a trilogy, and I really enjoyed this. I need to read more Alessa Thorne because this was spicy and fun. I have Breaking Out by Samantha Whalen. This was a 4.5 star for me. This was an MMF. I absolutely love this. I have quite a few more Samantha Whalen that I want to get to. And being that it's Pride Month, I really should dive into a couple of those. But I loved this one. This one is like, it's fantastic. No, Jennifer, you can't go into details. But loved this MMF. It's one of my faves. Absolutely delightful. His Cocky Prince by Cole McCade. This one was a 4.5 star. This one was no surprise either. This is the third book in a series by Cole McCade that all has cocky in the title. This one was an age gap between like a prince and an actor, and like the prince is getting into acting and he gets sexually assaulted by his director, and the actor, who it's the first time he's been asked to play the father instead of the love interest, and so he's feeling very like bitter about it, but he sees what happens to this you know, young actor, and he's very disturbed by it and wants to say something. Loved it. It Ain't Me, Babe by Tilly Cole. I gave this one 4 stars, and I've read 4 other books in this series. This series was right on the edge of working for me. It is an extremely dark MC romance, and though it does have all of the aspects of biker culture that I am not a fan of, it still works somehow because of the content in this. The hero is mute, and the heroine is getting out of a cult where she was extremely abused. Very heavy topics. The Guy in the Window by Cara D. I gave this one 4 stars. This is a gay romance, age gap, and it is a like kind of uncle and nephew romance. It's not really, like, especially not biologically at all. And it was actually a very sweet romance. There's also a single dad in this one. The Madness of Viscount Ashthorborn by Elisa Braden. This one was a 4-star read, and it continued my love of Elisa Braden. This starts off the Rescued from Ruin series, which is excellent. All the audiobooks are amazing. These books are fantastic. The Dare by Harley LaRue. Gave this one 4 stars. This was a novella, extremely spicy, extremely kinky. There's literally a truth or dare game that ends up happening at a party, and there's a bit of like bullying involved. And Then He Kissed Her by Laura Lee Gerke. I gave this one 4 stars. I couldn't tell you what this one is about. I don't remember. Sorry. But I had a good time with it. My Husband, My Stalker by Jessa Kane. 4 stars. It's Jessa Kane. It's bonkers. The stalker ends up marrying the girl. She becomes his woman. But he was her stalker like before he was her husband. And she doesn't know that he had stalked her and then married her. Faye's Captive by Lily Archer. This was 4 stars. This is the beginning of like a series that is a like fated mate fantasy romance. It was a fun time. I binged like the whole thing after I read this one. Disciplined by the Duke by Allison Chase. This one is a slightly kinky, I believe the hero is Scottish. They are caught in a compromising position, and the Duke needs to marry her. The woman really doesn't want to do it, but he is like, why is she so insulted by like me wanting to marry her? But I had a good time with this one. 4 stars. Now we have some that I actually have again. Sailor Proof by Annabeth Albert. This was one that I already like had on my TBR when someone recommended it to me. I have since like really loved a lot of books by Annabeth Albert. I've read quite a few, and there are actually quite a few more books by her that are on my list as well. This one is a brother's best friend. It's a gay romance, and it's fake dating as well. And this was so much fun. Annabeth Albert writes the sweetest gay romance. Like, seriously, sugary sweet. It'll hurt your teeth. Claimed by the Alien Warrior by Tiffany Roberts. This one didn't take much convincing for me to read. This one was a 4-star book. I even have some spicy art because I ended up getting the book box that had this one in it, and whew, this is a spicy one. This one is actually like a captor-captive because the alien, he escapes from a facility where they're experimenting on him, and he ends up like hijacking this woman and her vehicle and trying to get her to drive him to safety. So, but I love this couple. Plus size heroine. and spicy big dick. It's fantastic. Land of the Beautiful Dead by Arlie Smith. Woo! This one was 4 stars, and I will never forget this book. It's not 5 stars because it's dark as fuck. It's kind of post-apocalyptic, but there's also this, like, this being that's, like, king of death. He's ugly and scary, but somehow extremely sexual, and is the one who, like, rules over the dead, and humans are few and far between, and he sees them as, like, not worth his protection. And there's this one woman who decides to try to become his concubine and get him to stop what he's doing. There's so much more involved in that book, and if you decide to take on Arlie Smith, just be prepared for a mind fuck. I don't know what else to say. This book was a slow torture, but also I couldn't stop reading it. And I've heard it's a horror too. Like, it is horrifying at the same time, but I read it. And, like, I don't regret reading it, but also I'll never forget it, and not in the best way. So it's 4 stars. Like, a lot. Savage Lands by Stacey Marie Brown. Another one that these went around TikTok. I'm actually planning to read the second book this month. I gave this one 4 stars. I didn't hate it. There's barely any romance starting at the beginning of this one, though. This one is kind of post-apocalyptic, but there's, like, Earth, and then there's Fae, and it starts with Brexley, this human, ending up in, like, prison, or it's called the House of Death, but it's basically a prison, and being a human, you are the lowest on the totem pole in this prison, because there's Fae who are much more powerful than her. And then there's this dude named Warwick, who is considered the fiercest one there, and they have an interesting connection. And I don't know much more than that, like I said, because not a ton gets progressed between them in this one, but I'm ready to continue this series. I definitely will. So 4 stars for me. A Perfect Gentleman by Candace Camp. I gave this one 4 stars. I had a good time with this one. I'm actually reading another Candace Camp this month too. This one was, they get married, and he makes her feel so bad for kind of their, like, arranged marriage / he gets, like, blackmailed into marriage by her dad, I think. And so she just, like, runs away and leaves him, and they live separately for all this time. And now she's come back, and he wants to make sure she's not there to cause trouble. And some more goes from that. I had a really good time with this one. And yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. Featherbed by Annabeth Albert. I gave this one 4 stars. This was a gay romance. This was part of the, like, I think is it Vino and Veritas series? Like, it's Serena Bowen's, like, publishing company that did this, and she has a whole series that are all gay romances. I've read, like, The Roommate was also part of this. So this is a small town, like, chicken farmer, and then there is this, like, businessman. Is he a businessman or a doctor? I can't remember what he does, but he's coming there to help a family member. And he isn't planning to stay very long, but he ends up falling for this, like, hobby farmer person. And it was cute. It was 4 stars. The Tyrant Alpha's Rejected Mate by Kate C. Wells. This one was a 4.5 star. Totally loved this book. I only took a half a star off because this was a slow burn. Kate C. Wells was literally trying to make me beg for it. Like, I felt I needed to grovel in this book, but as the title says, this is a rejected mate story, and the hero does have to grovel. Believe you me, does he ever. But overall, I had a wonderful time with this book. It just didn't quite tip it over the edge for me. There was The Anti-Boyfriend by Penelope Ward. This was a 4-star book for me. I happen to already have this one when someone recommended it to me. This is a single mom with a new baby, and her neighbor is bringing home very loud sex capades, and she asks him, hey, could you keep it down because I'm trying to sleep and I have a baby. And then her baby keeps him awake, making noise at night, and he ends up, like, being her friend next door, who they become very close with, and he's great with her baby. It was adorable. Of course, we have Mafia Mistress by Mila Finelli. I've talked about this one endlessly recently. This one was 4 stars. This was not my favorite thing, but the second one was 5 stars, and I absolutely loved it. This is an age gap, my son's fiance type of situation, and a heroine who wants nothing to do with the mafia, even though she was born into it. And Fausto, who is the head of the he's one of the heads of, like, the Sicilian mafia in Italy, and he forces Francesca to come be his son's fiance after her father owes him some money, and things get crazy from there. Scarred by Emily McIntyre. I also gave this one 4 stars. This was a like Scar from The Lion King, but royalty, but also kind of historical. And this was very dark, and the hero was very possessive, and it was okay. It was okay. The story wasn't the best thought out that I've seen, but I will read some more Emily McIntyre for sure. Definitely willing to do so. 5 Rounds by Nikki Castle. Gave this one 4 stars. This was a fighter romance. They were actually both fighters, and they train at the same gym, and they end up having to be roommates, but they hate each other. And like her friend is his roommate, and like, you know, he likes his roommate, and she ends up needing to stay there for a little while because she gets kicked out of her apartment, and they end up having kind of a hate sex situation with each other. There is Nightmare by Provocative Enemy. I gave this 4 stars. This was a Snape and Hermione. Whoa, no, I am sorry. Hermione and Tom Riddle Harry Potter fan fiction. It has time travel and a virgin Tom Riddle. It was a good time. It was a twisty good time. But the story, of course, is so bonkers that it was difficult to fully connect with this one, but it was still a good time. Pensive by Trevina Terry, I gave 4 stars. This was one of the first recommendations I ever had, and I finally read it a couple months back. This is a black love romance. The hero is actually a like contract killer who kills bad guys. He's into BDSM, and the heroine had just got out of like a long-term like bad relationship. She's an author, and she's like, they're going to like a convention, and they end up meeting and having a one-night stand, and then it goes from there. 4 stars. Dare You by Ella Frank and Brooke Blaine. This was a gay romance. I gave it 4 stars. This book was kind of the book that taught me that I'm kind of over Ella Frank and Brooke Blaine, because I've read this story so many times before. The thing that I liked about it is that one of the heroes was a like cross-dresser, and I mean what I said. He likes to dress however he wants, and sometimes he dresses female and sometimes he dresses male, but he's a gay man and he dresses both. So I'm not saying that with any shade at all. That is what he does. And so when our first hero meets him, there is a fire, and the one hero is a straight firefighter, and he rescues the other hero, and he happens to be wearing this beautiful dress and heels because he's dressing fashionably this time. And when he brings snacks to the fire department the next day to save them, they almost don't recognize him because now he's dressed in his regular business attire, and he has to say, I'm the beautiful gal that you rescued the other day. So I really liked that. I liked that it was just, I'm going to dress how I want to. So it was wonderful. But the story as itself is, of course, another trilogy, because that's all Brooke Blaine and Ella Frank do, is stretch a story that could definitely be in one book into 3 books and make you have to wait so long to get it. And I don't love that. But the story itself would have been great, but I didn't care enough to read the other 2, because why would I, when I know what's going to happen in this, because you've done it so many times before. But if it's your first series you're reading by them, this could be your favorite. I've read this story in every other series that they've done. Big Rock by Lauren Blakely. This one was a 4.5 star. This one was a friends to lovers fake fiance. It was really fun. Loved the audiobook. Empire of Desire by Rena Kent. Gave this one 4 stars. This was a taboo dad's best friend. I think they need to have they have a marriage of convenience as well. Dane's Storm by Mia Sheridan. This was 4 stars. This was a good time. This is a second chance romance where the 2 of them end up in a trip together in a plane that he's driving, and they end up going down and having to survive together, and also rekindling their love while they're fighting for survival. Merciless Saints. I was reading the wrong thing. By Michelle Hurd. I gave this 4 stars. Actually just finished this one the other day. It is the most recent book I've read from the book rec form, because this is the start of the Monarch Academy / the Saint series by Michelle Hurd. I'm currently reading the Sinner series because it's coming out right now, and I'm loving it, and I want to read more Michelle Hurd. So I read this one, and it was 4 stars. And this was a Starts where they're like at a mafia school type of thing. And then it ends up being an arranged marriage later on, which is great. Talking too much, too fast. Alrighty. I did a good job, because now we're getting to the big guns. Now we are at the 5-star books. Trouble. So, we have Annie's Song by Katherine Anderson. I've talked about this book many times. Many times. Absolutely love this. This book I read last year. We also did it for Rake Appreciation Society, which whenever this book gets brought up, you know, it's gonna hit some people in some certain ways, and I understand, but it made me sob my heart out when I read it, and I gave it 5 stars, and I stand by my 5-star, even though there are problems with the book. Like, I can love books that have a lot of problems. Carter Mahoney is one of my favorite main characters in a book. It's gonna happen. Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. This book is dark and twisty and terrifying and lots of triggers, so many triggers. But it is a sister's fiance romance, but there also is a serial killer involved, so I'll just tell you that. Prisoner by Annika Martin and Skye Warren. This, I think, was the first book that I read this year. Maybe? Either way, I did a vlog at the very beginning of the year reading, like, my first 5 books that I read recommended by you guys for the year. And I really like this one. This is a prison escape romance and the woman who gets caught up in it. Captive of the Horde King by Zoe Draven. This is the first book in the Horde Kings of Drakkar, and yeah, I actually gave this 5 stars. That is crazy. But this one reminded me of, like a lot of people say, it really reminds them of like Daenerys and Khal Drogo fanfic, but it's alien, and there are like 2 moons, and the hero has a tail and a knot in his dick, and it's fantastic. This one is like the heroine thinks she's sacrificing herself for her brother, but really she gets made into his queen. So there we go. Escorted by Claire Kent. This is a male escort who gets hired by our heroine to take her virginity, and she ends up being his long-term client, and then a romance forms between them. I absolutely love this copy. I got this from my friend Esty. She sent it to me, and it's so good. It led me down a whole Claire Kent spiral. I absolutely loved it. And Sustained by Emma Chase. Here's my other Emma Chase I have to share. I got this for Christmas from my lovely friend Jessin. But this one is I just love this. So we have Chelsea and Jake is a lawyer, and he gets pickpocketed by Chelsea's nephew. And we learn that Chelsea is barely keeping it together. She has adopted her 6 orphaned nieces and nephews, and he ends up getting pulled into this family. And even though this bachelor has no desire to be bogged down by children, he can't help himself but love this family. And this book stole my heart. It absolutely stole it. I adore it. Surviving a Rain by Shay Savage. This is a survival romance. This is the captain who is an alcoholic, messed up dude, and this girl, she's on a charter boat, and they end up washed overboard together and having to survive on an island until someone rescues them. And he has to go through like withdrawal from being an alcoholic, and they have to find a way to survive together. And it was a very powerful story. Wild North by J.B. Salisbury. This one is another kind of survival story. Our heroine is camping with her boyfriend and her best friend and another person, and she discovers her boyfriend cheating on her with her best friend while they're on this like trip hiking are they in Alaska? Probably. They're usually in Alaska. And she ends up falling and tripping, and she gets rescued by this grisly man who absolutely does not want her to be there. And he nurses her back to health and like keeps her safe until she can be rescued. And then there's a big twist in this series that I was not expecting. And I love this. The hero also has some neurodivergence, which was great. There's another book in this series coming this year, and I'm very excited about it. The Wrong Heart by Jennifer Hartman. This one, there's too much in this to even try to explain. This was a 5-star book. Jennifer Hartman, when she hits hard. So good. Condemned to Love by Siobhan Davis. This was the first in a Mafia series. This was a second chance romance, Secret Baby and Sister's X, that I was not expecting because it has a lot of things in it that I don't like. But this book, it follows my rule about why a secret baby can work, and it's when it's in the Mafia and you're trying to keep your child safe. I'm okay with a secret baby. So this one worked for me because I too would probably run if it was a secret that the man was with the Mafia. Sex and Occlumency by Grant Dahl. This is a Hermione fanfic where Hermione has a secret kink that she would like to have a consensual non-consented to situation, and Draco ends up finding out about it, and there's a whole lot more that has to go with it, but this was sexy and amazing. Loved it. And then the last 5-star that I have to share is Control Freak by Brianna Hale. This is one I've been wanting to read for ages, and it happened to be one that was also a viewer recommendation. This book definitely has some real life triggers in it though. Our heroine has an eating disorder that she has been and is actively struggling with, and she has parents who don't fully understand it either, but she ends up getting a short-term position with her dad's, I believe it's her dad's friend at his business. She is being his assistant for a short-term situation, and her and the hero end up entering into this like dominant submissive like dynamic that in the beginning doesn't have anything to do with sex. It has to do with control and him controlling her, giving her some freedom from her mind and from her unhealthiness. And where I think it's very accurate, where it kind of like is that it's not enough to fix her. Like the BDSM is healing because it's helping her work through things, but in and of itself, she isn't fixed just because she has a dominant who is telling her what to do. That's not enough. She needs medication. She needs psychiatric help to help with her eating disorder. But I loved how this book worked out. It was painful. Like I said, this has real life triggers. If you have eating issues or any of those, like I don't recommend this, but if you can handle it, this was a very powerful story. And in my opinion, probably Brianna Hale's best work. And I've read quite a few things from her. Okay, then I have the 2 6-star books that I have gotten from this form. I think there was one other that's in one of the previous videos, but I consider, as I said, all of the 4-star through the 6 stars I consider complete success. But these were the 2 recommended in the book rec form that I consider my very favorites. They made it on a favorites list. One of them will be on my favorites list this year. But the first one is Eyes of Silver, Eyes of Gold by Ellen O'Connell. This was one of mine from last year. This book is a historical romance, and I know the cover is not great. We all know it. The cover's not good. But this is about our heroine who, Anne Wells, her family is trying to force her into an arranged marriage, and she tries to make a run for it. And she stops to spend the night at, I believe, Cole, or is it Kate? How do we say his name? Cord, at Cord's farm. And now Cord is a mixed race cowboy, mixed Native American, and he lives on his own. He's actually like, he has older like step siblings, and they kind of leave him off. They think he's crazy and like mean, and they think there's something wrong with him. But he gives Annie a place to stay for the night, but then her family catches up, her father and the man that they're going to try to make her marry, and they beat the shit out of Cord. They force Annie to marry him, but they leave him for dead. So her father is like, I'm going to be back tomorrow. Have a good night with the corpse of this man who was so nice as to help you. But here's the thing. He lives. She nurses him back to health through her own injuries and his. And they're married to each other. They were married by the priest who was somehow hoodwinked to be there. Well, not the priest, but the reverend or whatever. And she even fights off when people like come back to try to get her to leave. And these two don't have it easy, okay? They have a tough road. But this book was so emotional and powerful, and like there was a lot of miscommunication they had to get by. But in the case of this story, how hurt these two people are and the things they lived through, like I believed the miscommunications that they were having. And yeah, this book. And then another one that I've talked endlessly about. I put it in so many videos, but it was one of my first 6 stars of the year, was Soul Eater by Lily Mayne. This one is a gay monster romance / apocalypse / fantasy. There are monsters and men, and all of them in the series are gay. And this one is Win, the Soul Eater, and Danny, who's a soldier at the beginning of this book. And through some events, they end up traveling together and end up falling in love. And I love it. This is the softest, most precious gay romance, but with magical body parts, that I've ever read. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So there we go. Those are 55 recommendations from you guys. Again, I have like another 20 in other videos you can watch. If you would like to recommend a book to me, check out the book rec form down below. In fact, it's the best way to recommend books for me because I don't tend to see them if it's other places. So thank you so much for watching this. Thank you to everyone who's given me recommendations. It is honestly amazing. I look forward to many, many more. It's the best. It's absolutely the best to have recommendations handpicked and sent to you. And I know I'm in a very privileged place because of that. But here's the thing. People funnel these books into me, and then I funnel them to you guys. And I tell you the ones that I love the most. So it's all just a symbiotic relationship. You give me some, I give you some. That's how it works. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.